I'm the Octagon, and from two countries fighting over imaginary lines drawn by the British Empire, to two countries fighting over imaginary lines drawn by the British Empire, to the British fighting over imaginary lines drawn by themselves, there have been a lot of wars fought for some really good reasons. But recently I found out about a lesser known war fought against a more unusual enemy for a more unconventional reason. So let's talk about Ecuador's war on goats. Now, the Galapagos Islands of Ecuador today are home to a large number of unique species like the Galapagos tortoise and the Galapagos penguin found nowhere else. But it wasn't always like that. In the mid-90s, the Galapagos Islands were overrun by goats, which were left there centuries ago by some explorers, merchants, and pirates who initially planned to use them as livestock later, but they just kind of forgot about it and faded out of existence. Now, don't be fooled by a goat's innocent appearance. Sure, they are cute on the outside and tasty on the inside, but these things are nature's lawnmowers who will eat anything in their way that's green and doesn't move. And they multiply faster than the average kid on China's Got Talent. For instance, in 1959, some fishermen left just 3 goats on the island, and 14 years later, there were 30,000 of them. And by the year 1995, there were 250,000 goats, who as usual were just eating everything on the island, but the native species like the tortoises, being all slow and steady in this case, were just starving to death. So the government saw all of this and was like, alright, these Galapagos gotta go off Galapagos. But capturing 250,000 goats alive and sending them somewhere else was just impossible. So the only solution left was to slaughter every single one of these Satan-looking creatures. And so in 1997, the government launched Project Isabela and sent hunters to the islands who would just shoot any goat on sight. But this method was just way too slow and inefficient, so they instead brought in helicopter pilots and skilled sharpshooters from New Zealand to just fly around the islands and shoot down entire herds like some real-life chicken invaders. But this was really effective, and in just a few years, about 90% of the goats were eradicated from the islands. But now this is also where things started to get more difficult. You see, the goats were now smarter and recognized that helicopters mean death. So now whenever they heard the sound of helicopters, they just hide behind cover and couldn't be tracked down that easily anymore, which I'm sure would have made the hunters get their goats. So to finish the 10% remaining goats, the hunters came up with a genius plan called the Judas goat, where they would basically capture some of the female goats, sterilize them, and slap a GPS tracker on it. Now goats, being social animals, when released back into the wild, would seek out other fellow goats, and as soon as the presence of a herd was confirmed, the hunters would move in and kill every single goat in the herd except the Judas goat, who would then seek out other goats later on, bring death to that herd, and the cycle would continue. Like, imagine trying to make friends, but everyone you talk to just dies. But hey, I guess that's probably what you get for being a Capricorn. But in the end, the entire mission was a massive success, and by 2006, 300 traders were the only goats left on the island, and they were allowed to live the rest of their PTSD-filled lives. Under surveillance, of course. Now I know some of you may feel bad because we killed that many goats, but hey, come on, we made their lives look more interesting than it usually is, so I'd say we're on equal terms here. You'd also think that Ecuador's dead goat exports would be through the roof, but no, that would have been just ridiculous, so they just left them on the island to decompose, and soon enough, all the vegetation they had destroyed came back. Ecuador got more tourist money, and all the human efforts helped the Galapagos tortoise population go from 3,000 to about 20,000 today, and absolutely nothing would ever endanger them ever again. But if there's one thing that we can learn from this entire story, it's that maybe being an introvert isn't such a bad thing after all. So the next time you feel sad about staying at home and playing God of War or something, just remember that you might have saved some lives just by being yourself. But as for now, I'm the Octagon, and thank you for watching. Quick survey about grass. Is the grass tasty? Yeah. Do you wish there was more grass? Yeah. Would you help to grow some yourself? What?